People who've had a secret affair, why did you decide to cheat instead of leaving your partner? She gained so much weight I was no longer attracted to her. And by weight, at least 100 pounds. Being intimate physically hurt me, and I couldn't enjoy it anymore, so I avoided it whenever she initiated it. I had some friends who were going through a rough patch, and they invited me over for drinks. They asked if I wanted to do it, and I engaged with them. The experiences weren't terrible. She never found out, and the relationship ended quite recently, after a difference of opinions on things that mattered between us. Story 2. Together. 9 years. Married 4. Had a daughter together, and she was my life and joy. Wife cheated when my daughter was 2 while going through postpartum depression. Up until the depression, our relationship was awesome, loving, and had great intimacy, and we were happy. Things got bad. I fought for our marriage and found out she had been sleeping with a coworker and became a really hateful person towards me. I have never loved any woman like I loved my wife, and that just devastated me. I did consider leaving, but her mom and dad asked me to give her time to work through her depression, and I couldn't be away from my daughter. I don't think her parents knew she was cheating. I met a woman through work a year later who was interested in me, but I wasn't looking for that. She backed off when I told her I was married, but we stayed friends. I continued to struggle with working out my relationship with my wife and me, and this woman eventually crossed that platonic boundary. At that point, I felt I owed it to myself to think about my happiness for a change. It was hard to even think about sleeping with someone who wasn't my wife, but made myself go through with it to create some emotional separation from her. My affair was an older woman, divorced, very attractive, and was not looking for anything serious after getting out of years in an abusive marriage. It was surreal the first time, but I became easier, and it went on for about 6 months before I ended it. It may sound messed up, but I genuinely think it was a good decision for me. Eventually, my wife and I went to marriage counseling, and we talked all of this out. It was good for her to learn about my affair as well because she stopped taking me for granted, and for the first time it occurred to her that she could lose me. We worked through it, and eventually got back happy, and had 2 more kids, and we've been married 33 years now. Story 3. Honestly, it had barely anything to do with my partner or the marriage. Sure, he had his moments, but overall, he was a great husband, friend, and father. The problem was not loving him, it was not loving me. Once I got a taste of the validation of being adored, "You're so beautiful, so smart, so sexy, so amazing," I was hooked. It was like an addiction I knew I needed to quit but just could not quite get over. It could have been alcohol or drugs that ruined my marriage. I am sober now, and honestly, I will never go there again now that I know what kind of devastation it can cause. Story 4. Not an affair, but I did cheat. I was stupid, drunk, and in the mood. I had only ever been with one girl. No one else had ever found me attractive. Then suddenly, I'm in a dorm room with an insanely hot Romanian taking her shirt off. I felt her boobs. Then we both got scared and guilty, and spent the next hour just talking. The next day, I admitted what happened to my girlfriend. She kicked my bum over that one for years. But we're still together for over 20 years now, and with 2 kids. I still regret what I did, but am also grateful that my experience of cheating, and how horribly it can damage the person you're with, was from 5 seconds of touching a boob. If I had gone farther, I doubt my kids would exist right now, and that thought scares the crap out of me. Story 5. It's difficult to be objective about these things. My marriage had grown toxic over the years. My wife's focus was all on our children. We never did anything as a couple anymore. I was very much a hands-on dad, changing nappies, taking them for walks, doing most of the cooking whilst holding down a full-time job, yet that still wasn't enough. She was always complaining that I didn't do enough. My wife seemed to resent my having any downtime, chill time. She would make lists of things for me to do at weekends. She would belittle me and criticize me. I remember saying I'd like to go skiing with friends from work sometime, and she took the piss saying, "Imagine you trying to ski, you're hopeless." We had only done it once in 2 years. In fact, my wife told me if she never did it again, she'd be fine with that. We argued a lot over trivial things, and she'd throw the divorce word around like confetti. I went on a dating app and found someone to sleep with. I guess as a man with a high drive, I had needs. I know I should have just left her, but I was so anxious about leaving my kids. I met the woman off the dating app twice, just for physical gratification. I resented my wife so much at that point, I didn't feel a shred of guilt while doing the deed. My wife found out, and that was that. Divorced 3 years ago. Story 6. My husband of 29 years visited S-workers our entire marriage. I never understood it. He always worked and came home. He didn't party or hang out. He never had friends and was a good father and provider, just a crap husband. I always worked and would beg him to be intimate with me, not knowing at the time what he was doing. When I found out finally after years of being ignorant, kids were grown and I divorced him. I am now 59 and he begged forgiveness and not to divorce. I went through with it. I have always worked and wasted my best years on someone without feelings. Funny how he is 63 and is in horrible condition now and just wasting away as I just work, enjoy our family, and go on with peace. Story 7. My ex-wife cheated. We co-parent well now 10 years later, but how it's described to me, she knew she didn't want to be married anymore. Didn't want to deal with the embarrassment of telling me and our family she wanted to end it. I don't know what her game plan was, how long she would have kept it up if she didn't get caught, but overall, I'd say she felt trapped and embarrassed. The marriage wasn't working, and we're both better off after a divorce, but I wish she had told me and then moved on. It took me much longer to get over it because of the cheating, and I still have trust issues. She's married to the guy she cheated on. I've had few relationships but typically end things before they can get too serious. Story 8. Because I could. I was selfish and wasn't thinking about the other person. I was in a happy relationship and was very fulfilled intimately and otherwise. I was working as a doorman for a popular bar and was always approached by young attractive women. And at the time, I had thought that no one would get hurt if nothing was found out. I was selfish and immature, and I didn't realize how much it would hurt myself to betray my own morals in such a way, let alone the hurt I would cause the other person when they found out about my indiscretions. I was also struggling with my self-image and self-love and self-respect, all of which led me to be constantly seeking more and more validation from attractive women instead of trying to find reasons to be proud of myself. Biggest mistake of my life, and I would never do it again. Story 9. Dead bedroom, and despite all efforts, didn't improve, but I loved her, and I didn't want to leave her, but refused to spend the rest of my life in an asexual relationship. I'm sure this will get downloaded to hell, but most Redditors haven't been in relationships that span decades and have no idea what it's like. This place doesn't understand shades of gray, and I don't expect anyone to understand why I did it. Story 10. Misplaced feelings. I wanted love and physical touch. My partner had checked out those 12 months prior. I'd spoken to her many times about why and if there was anything I could do. The conversations always lead to nothing. I should have taken the initiative and ended it there as unrequited. Instead, I stuck it out, whatever it was by then, essentially sharing a rent bill. Eventually, someone showed an interest in me outside of my relationship, and I put those feelings towards that person instead. Honestly, it felt great initially to have someone that showed interest and wanted you physically, but the guilt ate at me pretty quickly, and within a few months, I had to end everything. Stopped the affair and ended the relationship and did a whole clean slate on a fair few parts of my life. From my experience, affairs don't just happen accidentally. They're led by something. In hindsight, I was incredibly unhappy for years. An affair wasn't the solution, but it was a little bit of happiness in an otherwise very lonely time in my life. Story 11. I can answer your question from an analytical perspective. I think sometimes when the routine of life overwhelms two people, life seems monotonous and boring, and some people like to relive the feeling of a first meeting, a first glance, a first love, and so they enter a vicious cycle. Between a temporary experience and keeping an old partner, confusion and deviation begin from the norm, and things develop, and that feeling of betrayal starts again. That's why they say, he who cheats once can cheat again. Story 12. We had been together for 13 years and had two almost 3-year-old. He refused to acknowledge my presence for 6 months, other than to complain I wasn't doing enough or ask me to take him to work. I was employed full-time. He had a suspended driver's license. I couldn't pick up and cook the way he wanted because I spent all my pre-work hours taking him to work, caring for the toddler, picking him up from work, and then going to work myself from 2 p.m., 9:30 p.m. I'll get home at 10 p.m., must cook dinner for him because he spent the night putting our son down and couldn't cook dinner himself, even though our son had a 7 p.m. bedtime. This is all the last 2 years of the relationship. Despite all of this, I'd still try to be physically intimate with him regularly, and every time was shot down for nearly a year. On a rare night out, I went to my girlfriend's house for a game night. Her husband's cousin was there, and it was like what happens in movies. It felt like the whole universe stopped, and it was just the two of us. I'm such a cynical person that I still get grossed out at how cheesy the whole thing felt. But it was instantaneous. I knew that this was who I was meant to be with. It wasn't because I was ignored by my son's father. It wasn't because I was emotionally and verbally and mentally abused to the point of depressive feelings and behavior. It was because the man I had just met was my literal soulmate. I had an emotional affair for about a month before I had been intimate with this man. He knew my situation. He didn't push for anything physical until I was ready. He knew I was beating myself up for even entertaining the idea of breaking up with my family. But once we went there, we passed the point of turning back. It made the decision for me. I left my ex the next day. I told him everything. He spent the next 6 months trying to win me back. He said all the right things with zero follow-up, as I knew would be the case. I'm now married to the man I met through my friend. He still makes my heart race and my stomach flip. He is literally obsessed with everything about me and isn't afraid to show it. We have a 4-month-old son. He is a great stepfather to my elderly. They're besties. My ex and I comparted so well, our son's teachers didn't realize we weren't together until we showed up to a school event with our actual partners. I cheated because I was ready to off myself, and I wanted to be selfish for the first time in over a decade. Postpartum depression, anxiety, rage, and psychosis can affect a mother for years after the fact, especially if there is no treatment or support system. I don't regret cheating, as I'm 100% certain I wouldn't be alive if I stayed with my ex. I just wish I hadn't needed to. You spend 13 years with someone you intend to spend your life with? Having a baby with a man whose red flags I'd been ignoring for nearly a decade? Plus a global pandemic shutting down the world 3 weeks after giving birth? I think that I was set up to fail. I do not believe the saying once a cheater, always a cheater anymore. Because of my experience, I'll never cheat on the man I call my husband. I still can't believe he's mine, and I'm grateful every day for him. Found out about a year after I left him that he cheated on me. The first 2 years we were together, and he'd been cheating on me since our son was born, claiming his work said he was an essential worker. And then whoever he was sleeping with would pick him up after I dropped him off, and then drop him back off before I pick him up. So, do what you will with that information. Story 13. I genuinely loved the girl I was with and enjoyed spoiling her. The problem was that I loved myself more and that I was a selfish man with a lot of personal issues. My cheating had nothing at all to do with her and had everything to do with me being a terrible human being. I modeled the behavior I observed in my own parents growing up, didn't accept that I could be in a happy and healthy relationship. There isn't a day that goes by I don't regret my actions, and there isn't a day that goes by that I don't miss my ex-fiancé. I feel like the rest of my life was cursed by my decision to cheat. I'm still working on getting my self-image back. I can't see myself as anything but disgusting now. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. Story 14. I was undiagnosed combat-related PTSD, spinning out and on a downward spiral, self-destructive and not valuing self, let alone anyone else yet. I still wanted to have good in my life, even while being undeserving of it. This duality tore me apart. It wasn't until a promise to seek help through the VA was extracted by mother and sister did things improve. Only then could I see and fully understand the scope of harm and wreckage I was leaving in my wake. It took so much recovery, mindfulness, and internal work just to make peace with myself and come to terms with my past in order to forgive who I once was and to move on from it. Once I moved past being numb, it was replaced by shame, and so that was a very strong emotion for a very long time. I had to overcome. Clawing your way up from the bottom isn't pretty. It isn't easy. Story 15. I didn't know I was cheated on until after my marriage ended for other reasons. In fact, I got told directly my husband was cheating by our shared PCP, and I still didn't believe it. When I talked to a family member about it, he admitted he had, at least in the past, been a serial cheater himself and been the backdoor lover for several married women. He said for him, and it seemed to him from some of the women, that cheating created a reason for the girlfriend or wife to break up with him, so he wouldn't have to feel like the bad guy for breaking up with them. Twisted logic. I do think that's likely what happened with my ex-husband too, though. Story 16. Because he wouldn't let me leave otherwise. I had spent a year begging him for a divorce, and every time he would tell me if I left, he would use his considerable resources to take everything from me. I tried to leave twice. The first time there was this huge snowstorm that shut down all the roads out of town, and the second time he shut off my debit card. I didn't know about my rights at the time, so I just assumed he was allowed to do that. I finally told him, if you don't let me leave, I'm going to have an affair, because it's the only thing I can think of that will make you angry enough to let me. He didn't listen, so I slept with someone who I knew had had a crush on me for a while. I had to start over with absolutely nothing, but I rebuilt my life. I'm not proud of what I did, but I was desperate after years of emotional abuse, and at the time it felt like the only way. Story 17. I didn't have the courage to leave a relationship that I knew wasn't working out. We were together almost 10 years and engaged. I realized I didn't want to marry him, but it was too much of a coward to end it. I met someone else through work and fell in love. When the affair came out, I was almost relieved to have a reason to end it. I was a complete and totally crap person. I still have guilt to this day about it, almost a decade on. I ended up getting together with my AP. He was married at the time and divorced his wife. We have a beautiful daughter together and have a wonderful, trusting and loving relationship. He is my soulmate without a doubt. I just wish I hadn't hurt so many people with my cowardice to get to my happy ending. 100% just leave, don't cheat, just leave. Story 18. My brother recently was cheated on by his wife. They were together for 10 years. Crazy though, she was ripping into a cousin's ex-boyfriend for doing the same thing years ago. She's just as bad as him and she doesn't realize it. My brother wanted to plan their future together. I'm so angry with what she did to him. I'm so angry at her. I thought she was supposed to be my sister and my brother's forever person. Story 19. I was a teenager and was terrified of abandonment. I knew if I broke up with the person, they wouldn't be in my life anymore, or at least not in the same capacity. I couldn't deal with that at the time, so I would be with them, but because I also sucked horribly at communication, I couldn't tell them the things they were doing wrong or not doing that I needed, so I'd find it in someone else. When I'd finally have the balls to end the relationship, it'd just all happen in the next one, and sometimes I'd go back to people I broke up with prior. Just a toxic time all around. It wasn't until I met my husband that I finally broke the cycle and figured things out. And yes, he knows about it all and trusts me. There is really no excuse. I can say that because of my abusive childhood, trauma, blah blah. That's why I did what I did. But even still, I'm not proud of what I did, and I don't condone cheating at all. If you're not happy in a relationship, you should just end it. If you can't deal with the embarrassment, hurt, whatever, figure it out and end it. Story 20, Bagzo Mormingye. Met the love of my life. Never been so happy with a woman. She was everything I ever wanted. Intimacy was great. We had the same humor. We loved spending every moment together. 5 months in, I had noticed she would get calls from no caller ID often and late at night. Decided to snoop through her phone one night when she passed out. Went to her recently deleted texts and found that for the first 3 months of our relationship, she had been seeing her ex. It shattered me. She sent him the same pictures she sent me. Some jokes. At the same time, she sent them to me. I saw that the night she saw me, she had told me she was with family, her mom was in hospital, etc. I was truly heartbroken. I didn't know what to do. I felt so betrayed and blindsided. She had always been so into me, and it felt weird that she had been doing this behind my back. I decided to get her back. She found out the next week after I was spotted with a girl in public. The one time I saw a girl to even the score, I got caught. She had gone for months doing this behind my back. It took a toxic turn from there. I hate that I did this because I still truly do love her. For some reason, I felt that maybe if I could get my manhood back, then we could make it work out. Yes, I am an idiot. She worked out of town, so I would only see her roughly half the time. I struggled with trusting her, and I struggled with the betrayal, so I continued to cheat on her with many different women for about 8 months. It all came crashing down recently when she found out and has contacted all the women and ruined my reputation publicly. I mean, I do deserve it. I should have worked this crap out a long time ago or just left her. The problem is, despite her now literally actively trying to ruin my life and us having no contact, I still think back to the good times. I still have this connection with her and love for her. I hate it. I hate myself for what I did. I hate her for what she did. And I also have sympathy for both of us. Story 21. Yeah, my mom cheated on my dad before they ended up splitting. He was putting his hands on her and she couldn't find a way out because she was a housewife and he didn't even let her have a license. She seeked out another man so she had ground to stand on when she could finally leave. That's a very specific situation though, and she doesn't condone it now. But 2 kids and nothing to her name made her desperate. Story 22. I wanted him to like me. From the beginning of our relationship, he cheated on me with so many other women, like 11 in the first 6 months. He was my first boyfriend, and I would get so upset that I would be physically sick for days. I thought I could do or be what he wanted, if I just tried harder and didn't know any better. My parents were strict and didn't allow me to date until I was 16, and I was also raised in a community that was predominantly racially different than me, and so I didn't hook up with anyone until just before college, a last-ditch effort to get some experience before I went away to school. When I started cheating back, I didn't even tell him, and I never slept with someone more than once. I would cheat and then just wallow in the crappy feelings of it all. I think it was all just self-flagellations. The cheating in the relationship, all of it. Growing up so undesired, I just didn't ever feel valuable or wanted. Eventually, I told him that I cheated on him. He demanded that we go to my parents' house and look my father in the eye and tell him what I had done. I did it because I was sure my dad would curse him out because I had told my dad about his cheating. My dad got quiet, admitted to cheating on my mom early in their marriage. News to me, got on his pulpit and preached at us. Then my ex demanded to speak to the man I had cheated on him with. I refused. That back and forth went for a couple months, until he finally got the guy's number out of my phone and called him, just to yell at him about his dong size. I left him that night and moved out shortly after. I spent the next several years practicing E&M. I've also been in monogamous relationships again and have not cheated minor. I just broke up with them. Story 23. Because my wife chose to become roommates with me. Even after multiple discussions and counseling, she moved to another room in bed. I also have kids that I did the majority of child raising and refused to leave them. Women get everything in a divorce, and divorce hurts your kids like almost nothing else. Spare me the bullcrap comments from guilty divorces that say divorce is better for your kids. It's not. The damage done changes by age, and there may be some outliers, but overall it's not. Story 24. My spouse was verbally and physically abusive. I had sacrificed my career to stay home with our kids, so the prospect of divorce felt overwhelming and impossible without income of my own. I also came from a conservative and traditional family and didn't feel like my parents would understand or support me if I chose to leave. They didn't. I'm not justifying the affair, but it became an escape for me, and even a retaliation on my part and a way to reclaim my autonomy. It was eventually discovered and we divorced anyway. It's been really hard, but so was marriage. Working on forgiving myself for what I did has been a complex journey. Story 25. Most people do not have the mental stability, calmness, and patience to endure the monotony and stability of a traditional 30, 40, or 50-year monogamous marriage. Most people get married believing the myth that marriage is a beautiful box full of everything they have longed for: companionship, intimacy, and friendship. The truth is that marriage, at the start, is just an empty box. You must put something in before you can take anything out. There is no love in marriage. Love is in people, and people put love into marriage. There is no romance in marriage. You have to infuse it into your marriage. A couple must learn this art and form the habit of giving, loving, serving, and praising, keeping the box full. If you take out more than you put in, the box will become empty. If you want a successful monogamous marriage, then for heaven's sake, learn to listen and respond instead of reacting. Learn how to apologize properly. Learn to love yourself and be compassionate toward yourself so you can love and show compassion to your partner. The goal of marriage is not to be happy. The goal is to grow and become a more loving human being. If you think you will never have to work at marriage, change aspects of yourself, or try to improve, you should skip marriage. Story 26. I cheated because I was desperately unhappy and didn't know how to let myself out. My very immature state thought if I did it, and I was found out, he would have to leave me, and I would avoid having the real conversation, that I had fallen out of love with him years ago, and his very touch made me flinch. He was a crappy husband and father and would throw my childhood essay at me during arguments. But we had a family, a home, and a 20-year history that I valued, and I genuinely thought we would be better as friends. I couldn't articulate it. I couldn't muster the courage to tell him how my heart hurt. So I cheated and made sure he found out. I am 100% sorry for it, and it was no one's fault but mine. Story 27. Because it is hard to leave a marriage and break up with your family. It's difficult in some societies, long-drawn legal process along with judgments from society, and some people are just looking for a ray of hope or distraction to keep their life going, or accidentally meet someone they can't draw boundaries with. Marriage is man-made. Falling in love and lust is something most people have no control over. I'm not talking about serial cheaters who just like to screw around for fun or for an ego boost, but it's not such a crazy thought that a human being can fall for someone else in their lifetime, and the concept of randomly finding a human to marry and expecting them to love each other for a lifetime is quite flawed. Story 28. I can't speak for me, but for the men I've been with who were married with kids, they want relief that doesn't upset the stability and dynamic they worked hard to achieve. They either love, are attached to, or are comfortable with their partners, but need more. Not always intimacy, usually something psychological, and because men are psychologically backed up, it often comes out as that. They know asking for more will be met with pain or a destruction of everything they've built, so there's no other way to get your needs met without losing what you love and or built other than you hide your needs and cheat. The idea that one person can meet all the needs of another is toxic BS. You can't, and foregoing needs builds resentment and distress. I imagine it's the same for women. I was honest about my needs and opened the relationship. We discussed everything openly, and it fell apart anyway. Humans are weak, that's why they have religion. They can't handle the truth, it's better to lie. If I lied, I'd still have my family and my needs met. Story 29. I was a dumb 20-year-old that fell in love too fast to realize what I really wanted. I had a beautiful wife who was in my corner from day one. She is an angel and I still appreciate everything she did for me, but being gay isn't a choice. After nearly half a year of sneaking around, I concluded that I couldn't hurt her anymore. It took a lot to accept myself and to own up to who I really was. I'm glad I did it, but I wish it wouldn't have hurt and disappointed so many people in the process. I'm no longer the masculine figure I had fooled others to believe I was. I'm no longer the golden child that my parents are eager to brag about, but I'm myself. Story 30. Being in a relationship with someone and having an affair with someone else is not the answer to anyone's problem. Understanding why you are having the affair is the only proper place to start. Are you having an affair because you are a cheater, or because you have found someone who treats you better than the person you are with? Regardless of what led you into that situation, the only proper way to handle it is by ending things with the person you are currently in a relationship with. You can try to justify it or twist it any way you like, but you are the one who decided to share yourself with someone else, regardless of what got you there. Once you do that, whatever existed between you and the person you were with is broken. It is the one thing that cannot be taken back, and it may never be forgiven. Story 31. My ex-husband cheated on me with a coworker with whom he traveled a lot on business. I tried to make it work because of the kids, but I left 2 years later. I never forgave him, and for some reason I especially couldn't forgive her. He totally gaslighted me during the affair. I knew it was happening, and he screwed me over so bad by telling me I was crazy. I finally got her email address and made a meeting plan for the two of them, and then I showed up. It finally brought the truth to light. We didn't speak for months. Thankfully, I found my true soulmate, and we've been married for 10 years. There are such things as happy endings. Story 3-2. I cheated because I was married to a man who made me deeply unhappy. I didn't really know how to have the conversation that I wanted to end the marriage, partly due to immaturity on my end and partly due to fear. While I regret how I ended the marriage, I don't regret that it ended. It's been 13 years and I'm still single. My ex has remarried, and per my kids, it sounds like he and his current wife are miserable. My daughter has gone without contact with her father as well. Story 33. My students asked me if I would leave my husband if he cheated on me. I said it depends, which horrified the girls into indignity that I didn't say 100% yes. They asked me why I would consider staying, and I said because it depended on the circumstances. Was this a one-time flying? Was he sorry? Was he sure that it would never happen again, nor put himself in any situation that could lead to it happening again? Just from reading these comments, I think we can all agree that no two occurrences are the same, and it is possible to recover trust. Story 34. Haven't had one but have been stuck financially, unable to divorce. Thinking about how I'm stuck in this marriage, I can't afford to leave it, and knowing I will lose access to my kids 50% of the time. I used to be against cheating for any reason until I got myself into this situation with someone who doesn't value me. When people don't understand why someone wouldn't just divorce rather than cheat, it triggers me. Some people truly are dependent on another person and cannot get away. If we didn't have kids, we would have split years ago. If everyone could afford to live on one income and still have access to their kids, it would be so much easier to leave. Story 35. As someone who's been cheated on, I'm not surprised these comments are filled with people trying to give a sob story instead of just saying, I absolutely lack moral integrity and have complete disregard for anyone or anything but myself. This is the only true answer, but they're incapable of being honest with themselves about the nature of their character flaws, which is why being dishonest with others has been easy. Full stop. Story 36. It wasn't a conscious choice, I'm going to cheat. There were many small choices. I never had a physical affair, but I developed feelings for someone else. The AP was fun and easy when life with my then-husband was miserable. My ex-husband also made many small choices. I will walk her to her car after work. I'll have lunch at the same time. I will respond to the text that has nothing to do with work. I noticed changes in his behavior but was so checked out that I didn't really care. When he told me he had feelings for someone else, I saw it as an opportunity to reconnect with my partner of 20 years. We attempted reconciliation for a year, and I decided that we no longer wanted the same thing. I wanted my best friend. He wanted a roommate. It took him years to realize what was lost. Infidelity comes in many flavors. Drunken bad decisions, not being willing to blow up your established life over a new relationship, fear of the unknown, fear of things staying the same way forever, a need to be desired, contempt for your partner. Things are very simple while being infinitely complex. I give a lot more grace to others than I did in my younger married life. Story 37. Immaturity and fear. I was in an abusive marriage. We hadn't been intimate for months or even slept in the same bed in months. I was afraid of going through a divorce and losing my kids. I was afraid of what my family would say and think. I was embarrassed to admit to everyone that my wife was abusing me. I thought I could sacrifice myself and my happiness to give my boys a family and keep their family together. Then one day, someone at work made me feel special and wanted and cared for, made me feel safe. She laughed at my jokes and gave me attention I hadn't gotten in a long time. Story 38. Oh, that is easy. She stopped talking to me entirely. I could not find her or talk to her. A few months passed. I knew she was not dead because of her friends. I found someone else, only to be contacted later and accused of cheating and not even officially breaking up. Like, what the hell? I assumed she was probably cheating on me, then used the easy excuse of accusing me so she could feel guilt-free, whether to herself or to her friends. Story 39. Because I was a terrible person over 10 years ago. There is no excuse for it. I was a terrible partner. I knew what I did was wrong, and I did it anyway. I was young and foolish. I have learned from that, and I will never allow myself to be that person again. The worst part is that there is no way to fix what I did. There is no way to take it back or make it right. You have to live with that regret forever. The best thing you can do is learn, grow, and move forward, striving to be better. Story 40. He groomed me when I was 15 and he was 22. I had repeatedly tried to break up with him over the years. He would speed and drive erratically until I said I didn't want to break up. He would cut himself and blame me, but he wouldn't let me just leave. I was 20, and he told me it was stupid for me to want to travel. Any career I was considering would take attention away from him. I wasn't allowed to do. I tried to show him we were incompatible. I tried to explain I had never experienced the world. He had to let me leave. I didn't love him at all. I hated him. He wouldn't let me go. He got more erratic, angrier, more obsessive, constantly going through my phone, picking me up and dropping me off at work, installing tracking apps on my devices. He wouldn't just let me leave. So I cheated on him with his friend, left it all out in front of him on my phone. He still wouldn't let me leave. Finally, I broke up with him over text while being parked in a very remote spot. He still showed up at my work multiple weeks later and managed to scare me into his car one last time after a shift at work. He demanded to drive me to my car. I told him my car was at his friend's. He needed to drop me off so I could go sleep with him. That finally did it. He was finally disgusted enough to hate me and to friggin' free me from his chains. Probably not the most common excuse, but I 100% believe if that hadn't worked, it would have ended with one of us ending our lives for him to leave me alone. Story 41. I was in an abusive marriage. After I suggested that we seek therapy for our issues, he told me I wasn't worth it. That was my breaking point. I knew our marriage was over. We owned a business together, so leaving at that time wasn't an option. I was depressed. I allowed that sorry excuse of a man to break me in my spirit. My self-esteem was at an all-time low, and I wasn't happy. I decided to seek an affair. I literally have no regrets that I cheated on him. I feel the person I had the affair with gave me validation and made me feel good about myself. It was what I needed at the time. I went on to divorce my ex after our business sold a year and a half later. The affair continued for a bit longer after that. Fast forward to current time, I am now happily married for 4 years to a man who loves me and makes me feel beautiful. I am indeed so lucky to feel love and to escape an abusive situation. Story 42. I should have left. I married a person who suffered multiple SA from family and others from a young age. I was raised sheltered and didn't pick up that something was wrong until after we had already had a kid. And I-dos were exchanged. Physical intimacy stopped. I cheated multiple times. I told her after and apologized. I meant it. She cheated multiple times plus. Tell me about it. I asked for the truth. She swore honesty, and we moved on. Or so I thought. We still kept having problems. Turns out there was a lot more going on. I couldn't take the neglect plus lies plus manipulation plus being taken for granted. I do wish I never cheated. I also sometimes wish I never picked the person I did. Story 43. I didn't initially know I wanted to leave. I truly should never have married my husband, but still turned myself inside out trying to make my marriage work. We were a bad match and he had depression that he wasn't great at dealing with. When someone came into my life and saw me in a way I felt like I hadn't been seen in a decade, I was done for. I was all in, hook, line, and sinker. The real answer for most people, me included, is that it's just easier to cheat. Leaving involves so many people and so many resources. I did eventually leave. It was the best thing I ever did for myself, but I don't know if I'd have done it without the affair first. I didn't think I had it in me to change my whole life until then. Story 44. For some people, they don't know if they actually want to leave their partner. And it's almost easier just to see how it is being with somebody else before they take the leap to leave their partner. The outcome could be that they feel totally fine with someone else and realize they shouldn't be in their long-term relationship anymore, or they realize they don't want to be with anybody else except their partner. Not saying this is the right way to go about it, just that this is what sometimes happens. Story 45. He wouldn't let me leave. In every way he would block me from leaving. I knew cheating was his only deal breaker. We went to a wedding in another town. He left me at a bar to go back with his friends. I stayed. A dozen British soldiers walked in as I was about to leave. I danced with one the entire rest of the night. I went back to his hotel. The kicker was his hotel room was literally above ours. I came clean immediately. He still wouldn't leave. I had to call his dad to come get him and his family had to literally force him to accept it was over. Story 46. My ex cheated after 17 years together, in the wackiest way. He started an online affair with a woman who was dying of brain cancer. When we were in couples therapy, I really wanted to understand why, especially because I had been begging him for years to talk to me about our relationship. He insisted everything was fine, great, and so on, but he felt like a stranger. I asked him why he did not just ask for a divorce, instead of cheating. He said, "Would that have been any different?" I was stunned. I said, "Yes, a humongous difference. Breaking up hurts, like getting punched in the face. An affair first is like hitting someone with your car, then punching them in the face. Much worse." I was so enraged. He is very much a person with enormous shame, self-hatred, and social anxiety, and many people believe he is closeted. I do know he is into some really strange interests which I did not really know about until after the divorce. He has cheated on his girlfriends since, and once they break up, I become their favorite person to call and confide in. He is an idiot. Story 47. My spouse was extremely controlling and emotionally abusive. Although I didn't realize the second part at the time, I'd been conditioned to believe that I could not leave my marriage due to religious reasons. I was also hypomanic due to an antidepressant. It was before I was diagnosed with bipolar, and I had no idea what hypomania was. I'm not justifying what I did or making excuses. It was a really crappy thing to do, and I'm not proud of it. It's not the type of person I want to be, but at the same time, I also really believed I couldn't leave. I'm doing much better since I left that marriage and got my diagnosis/meds figured out. Story 48. I was young, 19 years old, and I was in a relationship that I didn't feel safe in. It was very inconsistent, hot, cold emotionally. I lived with him and his mom. I didn't have an easy way out to break up with him. It took him leaving for a weekend to go visit his best friend up north. I also believe this was the same time he met his wife, for me to go out, get an apartment, and move out. His mom was addicted to H, so I had loads of time to get out without her noticing. Unfortunately, I was very attached to this guy. I had been with him since I was 15 years old. All my romantic firsts were with him. I wanted so badly to be with him at 15, 16, and even 17, but he wanted drugs, friends, and other women more. By the time he sobered up and wanted to focus on a relationship with me, I was already on my way out. I didn't want to give up on him. I always had a what if for him, so I entered into a relationship with him when I shouldn't have. It didn't matter what he did to me though. I cheated on him and that was that. I'm happily married to another man today. He's literally loved me back into good health. I was torturing myself with drugs and alcohol over the guilt I had for hurting my ex, taught me what true love and commitment is, and I feel safe with him. I've never had a thought of cheating on him. I can't even fathom it. My heart hurts for who I was with my ex and after. Story 49. 2 times back to back, I was the one, unbeknownst to me, who was their secret affair. I was a teenager and there were 2 managers, one right after the other. I had no knowledge of a significant other. I was completely in the dark. The first one was late 20s. I was 18 or 19, I think. Very friendly. We got along great at work. She wanted my number to talk. One thing leads to another, and 3 months later I found out, welp, she has a husband. How'd I find out? Well, she told me and quit her job. The immediate next manager, 20 or 21, I think, very similar. We got along with great, swapped numbers. 2 months this time. She gets shaded answering the phone and was more nervous at work. I get a call from a guy and he sounded sad, not mad. He explained she's done this before. It was so incredibly sad. I told him everything I knew to tell him. I felt horrible, but I never knew and tried to explain anything I could. It was very uncomfortable. She quits after that. The manager they replaced her with was a 33-year-old female. She was very nice. We were getting along great, so I quit. I waited about 2 years before my next relationship after that, lol. Story 50. I was immensely unhappy. I felt unloved for years. It was like I barely even existed to him. I was tired of begging to be seen, to feel loved, and I didn't think leaving was feasible because of how financially interlocked we were and how I'd known nothing else but life with him for 13 years. I was a coward and should have left ages ago. Don't excuse it though. I never want to be that person again. Story 51. I struggled with codependency issues since before we got together, and she unconsciously took advantage of that until I felt like all that I was to her was an ATM to take care of her and her kid. She was rude and domineering, and over time I felt like she had purposely done the very things I asked her not to when we got together. I begged and pleaded and argued for change for years, and I didn't leave because I felt like I had already lost all of myself, and to leave would be to lose the only usefulness I had in life. I was also secretly developing a corn addiction, or had one on some level when the relationship started, that exploded out of total control as I became more and more miserable. I know that it would have been better and healthier to leave, but I wasn't operating on a healthy level at all. I was lonely, addicted, and feeling emotionally castrated by the woman I had given everything to. None of what she did justified my actions, as careless and hurtful as they were, but the circumstances lined up perfectly for me to start acting out, and eventually it was easier to lie than to tell the truth. It was an ugly situation that I made uglier with poor choice after poor choice, and I was too deep in my own addiction/shame to do anything but keep running lying. Story 52. After witnessing many friends divorce due to cheating, the most repulsive thing is when the cheater blames their partner. The mental toll it takes on the partner is upsetting. It happens, people change, fall in and out of love, connect with someone else, apologize and move on. You are a superficial creature if you blame the partner when it's all on you. You are a narcissistic coward. Story 53. My dad was infamously overheard saying, "It's cheaper to keep her," because he was trying to support a family with 6 children and a stay-at-home wife who never held a job or even got a driver's license. I always found that ridiculous, but I learned she ran off to be with my dad at 14. From what I understand, there was a 10-plus year age gap. My dad would try to convince people my mother was dead or never existed. I never saw or heard these things firsthand. I was the baby of the family, a true accidental pregnancy because by that stage, my parents slept in separate rooms. My siblings and I have been in unsuccessful marriages. We have all been divorced at least once. I got married to the second youngest, at 19, but I was also the quickest to remarry 24 years and counting. I'm not a perfect husband or father. I believe my childhood environment influenced that. Staying away from my family has helped me manage things better. Like my mother, I have bipolar disorder. Unlike her, I sought treatment. I can thank my wife for that, but mania has almost destroyed our marriage multiple times. She should have left me 10 times over. Story 54. I hooked up with a married man for a few months. I didn't know he was married when we met, and I stopped seeing him once I found out. I asked him why he was cheating on his wife, and he basically said he liked variety and every man does it. He grew up in an environment where his father cheated on his mother, his brothers cheated on their wives, and his friends saw people on the side. He left his first wife after cheating on her with his second wife and was cheating on his second wife with me. The behavior was so normalized in his environment that he truly believed that's how things go. Story 55. I'm sure if you asked my wife, she'd say she had to find someone who could take over as her meal ticket. I even asked why she cheated, and she said she would have left years ago but couldn't afford to live on her own. When she found a man who was 70 years old, she was 57, but willing to buy a new house for her, she left. She said she left because I couldn't make her happy anymore. I had depression and PTSD. I wasn't abusive, and I still provided for her and our family, but I was sad and couldn't entertain her like I used to. Story 56. Not justifying my actions, but at the time I was in an emotionally abusive marriage and was constantly accused of cheating, and much more, but that's beside the point. I was confiding in a male friend and eventually thought, you know what? If I'm getting yelled at and sleep deprived over something I'm not doing, I might as well do it. It was the little nudge that gave me the encouragement to leave and taught me that there are people out there who can be loving and gentle. Story 57. He was abusive and unemployed. I was afraid to leave and couldn't just pack up because he was always home and took me with him when he left. I started talking to an old friend online, the only person I confided in about how I was treated. My boyfriend at the time isolated me from friends and family, but he didn't know about this online friend. This friend showed me kindness and love the first in 2 years. I was making plans to leave when my boyfriend went through my phone. Things got darker and scarier for a while. Eventually, I gained the confidence to leave, and circumstances allowed me to do it safely after 3 years. Sure, I could have used resources to avoid cheating, but I was so manipulated by mental abuse that it didn't occur to me. I just knew he wasn't nice and I wasn't happy. It took a year after leaving to realize I had been abused, which is common with PTSD. I don't think cheating was the right thing, but I understand why I did it and forgave myself a long time ago. Story 58. Funny, I started telling my story, but it was getting long, so I said, forget it. Long story short, we were both in awful marriages for many years. It started emotionally, then both marriages blew up independently. We got together immediately. I don't regret a second of it. It was storybook for about 4 years, until I couldn't compete with 4 awful kids, her shrew of a mother, and her eventually cheating on me with a doctor at her surgery center who later broke up with her because of the kids. After her kids grew up, she met a man with money, and they've been married 10 years. I've had a couple of relationships that didn't work, but I've been happily single for 25 years. I still don't regret it. It was amazing love, until it wasn't. Story 59. I was 20, I would never do this now. The guy I was seeing pressured me to make it official because he liked me more than I liked him. After months of delay, I said yes, but I had feelings for someone else. 6 months later, an opportunity presented itself, and I took it. I broke up with the original guy 2 days later. I never told him because I didn't think he deserved the trauma of my choices, and honestly, he was a really bad partner for many reasons. Those were the real reasons it wouldn't have worked, and it would benefit him to reflect on them. Story 60. I filed for divorce. He said he would fight to take everything, including the kids and my business. He comes from a lot of money, and I only had a couple thousand saved for the divorce. So I decided not to follow through and stayed married. That was my first mistake. Then I cheated on him with an old friend I had always been attracted to. It was what I thought I needed at the time to have emotional connection and cope with the hopelessness I felt in the life I was living. But really, it was wrong, and I felt like a terrible person the whole time. More to the story, but I ended up getting the divorce and am now so much happier. Cheating and living a lie wasn't for me, and I still feel terrible about doing that and not doing what I knew was the right thing in the first place. Story 61. I'm currently working on things internally, so I don't project my unmet needs onto the wrong person by cheating. It's a lot of work, it's hard, but growth is the reward. Get help from a professional to understand yourself better. Emotional intelligence and maturity will guide you, Ask ChatGPT if you can't afford a psychologist trained in schema therapy. The fact that you're asking suggests you have the capacity for the emotional intelligence required to make healthy decisions for yourself and those affected by your decisions. Story 62. I wouldn't say I had an affair, just because it wasn't long-lasting. I slept with someone once and then left my husband the next day, but it was definitely cheating. I fell out of love and tried to say something that I wanted to end, but my ex made a lot of references to wanting to die. I was 21, foolishly got married at 19, and anxious, and I felt evil for wanting to end things, so I stayed. In the end, it was because I let my fear of upsetting people make me too weak to do the right thing. I would never be that selfish and weak again, because now I see that by not leaving earlier, I wasn't only being unfair to my ex, but also unfair to myself. I was unhappy for a year because I cared so little about myself that I kept pretending everything was fine. Now I know that often the hard thing to do is the right thing to do. Story 63. When my ex cheated on me, she told me on my birthday that she had been cheating on me for a month, after we had been together 7 years. She then said, "If it makes you feel any better, I never loved you anyway." I guess I was just convenient for her at the time, until she found the guy to cheat with. Then she bounced around to different guys for a few months, telling me way too much because she said she wanted to stay friends. I stupidly agreed because I was in love with her and still wanted her in my life, but it quickly became clear she was hurting me. I communicated this, but she didn't care, just kept rambling about all the guys she was sleeping with. That was when I cut ties completely. She eventually started dating a high school friend of mine, and they have been together for about as long as my ex and I had been. I never told him, as I didn't want to A, step back into her life, or B, cause issues where there might be none. The worst part is I had a great relationship with her family, and they knew and no one told me. It felt like a multi-level betrayal. I have been estranged from my abusive family since I was 15, and it felt like they all stabbed me in the back after all those holidays and family gatherings we had spent together. It was worse than just losing a partner. It felt like I had lost my family and my place to belong in the world. It took a long time to cope with trust issues, and it's still a work in progress because intrusive thoughts are relentless. But it's not as bad as it was. I have now been in a happy and supportive relationship for the last 4 years. I went through a lot of difficult relationships between then and now, but I have learned how to be a better partner and for the most part cope with my issues. Story 64. Why I loved my partner and wanted to marry him. We were very young, but also felt I wanted to sow my wild oats and didn't want to risk losing him. So I thought I could have my cake and eat it too. Continue to date him and cheat. When he found out and left me, I somehow convinced myself I was the victim. This was 20 years ago, and I'm still embarrassed on many levels and feel awful that I treated a wonderful person that way. He went on to meet someone who treats him the way he deserves, but I will always regret my choices. Story 65. Because I truly cared about my partner as a person, and I didn't want to hurt her. But I also had deep resentment because she had promised to support me through graduate school, then in the middle of it started yelling at me because it triggered her abandonment issues. She would accuse me of being a workaholic. I wasn't, I was just a normal graduate student, and cry and have outbursts whenever she got disappointed about something she wanted to do with me. I had a 20-year friendship with someone who expressed interest in me, a manipulative narcissist who identified me as what she wanted. I only cheated once, and then the guilt pushed me to end my marriage. Karma bit me back in a big way. I was with my affair partner for 10 years and supported her through 4 years in a wheelchair. Then she left me 5 days after I was diagnosed with a second form of cancer, justifying it by saying she was abused and that I was controlling. I believed her at first. It took 3 years of therapy to truly understand that I was none of those things. I don't date now and have even rekindled some sort of preliminary friendship with my first wife. I still haven't forgiven myself. I had nightmares for years and years and hated myself for what I did. Finally, recently my first wife told me to quit torturing myself, that we were young and she was wrong too. Maybe I'll forgive myself someday, but not today. I hurt someone I really cared about, all for a bunch of pain and suffering. I don't date these days. I don't trust anybody. I will die alone. I've learned to accept it. Story 66. I haven't cheated, but I understand why people do. 1. Some are wired to only break a bond with their partner if they have intimacy with another person. They can't leave otherwise, an escape plan. 2. Lust and excitement. It's easy to hate those people, and some are obsessive about hating them. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. 3. Some cheat to escape domestic abuse. The bodyguard. Statistically, this often leads to violent serial relationships. 4. The boredom excuse. The lamest in my opinion. We are all relatively bored at times. Take up skydiving. You just broke another person. 5. Other betrayal. What about the loyal partner who doesn't cheat but betrays the marriage by taking intimacy from their partner's life? Love is complicated, and I don't believe cheating is simple. I've had friends I almost wished would cheat just to generate some agency in themselves, the downtrodden ones. Story 67. I didn't want to hurt my partner, whom I very much loved as a person, and yet I felt that rush, that heartbeat, that happiness whenever I saw the other woman. I was unsure. Was it just a crush? Hormones? I dragged it out needlessly and caused great pain and carried a lot of guilt with me to this day. I am now with the other woman and very happy with her. But my cheating, which was a result of me being desperately torn and completely confused, was wrong, and I am sorry for it. I didn't want to lose the woman who was my home and didn't want to give up the woman who made me happy. Story 68. I know it was pretty selfish, but I went out for hamburgers when I had steak at home. Thank God she took me back. We've been married 30 years now, and it was the worst mistake of my life. It was 16 years ago, and I still feel guilty every day for it. It is the only regret I have in this life, and I've done some bad things, but for some reason that one made me feel the worst. If I could cut my arm off to take it back, I would. The only thing I can do now is prove every day that I love her completely and will never do it again. I've been waiting these 16 years for her to do it to me because I deserve it. Unfortunately, it was a new toy telling me what I wanted to hear, and I fell for it. I feel bad for both women because they both got the short end of the stick. Story 69. By reading your question, I understand you want to know why someone would cheat instead of just leaving. Not necessarily why they cheated. Well, I'm the one who cheated. Why didn't I just leave? Fear, self-centeredness, and selfishness. It's been said here before, I wanted my cake and to eat it too. That was the selfish side. The fear side was that I knew I had a good partner. What would my life be without her? I didn't want to leave her, but I wanted to take care of my selfish needs. Mine is complex, and for me it involved being an alcoholic too. I was scared of the unknown. Pure, absolute, unadulterated nonsense. I convinced myself it wasn't going to hurt her, and that I deserved it. I could go on, but the big question is, why don't cheaters just leave? It's because they're cowards, at least in my case. We would rather take care of our needs than face and take care of the real issues inside of us. We take the easier way, or at least we think it is. No one wakes up one day and posts a question like this without a lot of pain behind it. I am sorry for your pain. I sincerely mean that. I hope you find some answers in these replies. Please take care of yourself. Story 70. Because I knew I was leaving my ex and I was done with emotional abuse in the relationship, I was getting my finances in order and finding a place to move into before I ended things. I was afraid of how he was going to react, physically and emotionally, when I left him, so I wanted to make sure I had everything ready before I left. The side guy was just a distraction from the toxic environment at home, and honestly, I would do it again. He saved me from myself. I was in a very low spot with my ex. I left my ex 2 or 3 weeks later. Story 71. For me, the cheating did not happen overnight. It happened slowly. I had 2 kids back to back. Then COVID hit. I lost myself for a while in motherhood and survival mode. When the world opened back up, I started going out more and feeling attractive again. I liked the attention. I started putting myself in situations that felt harmless at the time. At first, it was small, extra texting, emotional energy going somewhere it should not have. Then it became bigger things. Eventually, I crossed boundaries I never thought I would cross, mostly emotionally, but it still mattered. As I formed new connections, I was also slowly falling out of love with my husband. Living like that was torture. The internal conflict was constant. I eventually left. I took full accountability. I walked away from financial wealth I was legally entitled to, not because he demanded it or because I had to, but because I felt I needed to. I am a divorce attorney and understand exactly what I could have pursued. I chose not to. I wanted to make his life financially easier after what I had done. It did not undo the hurt, but it felt like the only way I could try to restore some balance. We are co-known well now. We are both dating other people. I will never cheat again, and I will never put myself in situations where I even could. I learned that cheating does not start with a full-blown affair. It starts with small shifts in attention, validation, and avoidance of deeper unhappiness. I hurt someone I loved. I hurt my kids. I own that. If you are on that slow slide right now, address it early. Silence and rationalization are how it grows. Story 72. You might as well be asking Reddit, why do you kick cats? Well, I'll bite, dead bedroom. But I don't think the love and the family/life we have is worth throwing away just because I want to do it with someone else. Hey kids, I love you all so much, but dad needs to get laid, so I'm out of here. See you every other Saturday. Sex is like 5% of a relationship. A relationship can be 95% good without it. So why does it? Because I didn't agree to be celibate for the rest of my life. That's the funny thing about it, isn't it? It's like intimacy isn't important, and I don't want to have it anymore. I've graduated it, unless you do it with someone else, and now it's the most important thing in the world. So yeah, I occasionally do it, and then I go back to being the family man I am, and believe it or not, I'm a good family man. I don't have a second girlfriend or anything. I know a few people I sometimes hook up with when they're in town. She's hinted at me. If I want to get my kicks, I can just do it safely and not let her find out nor anyone else. The thing with Reddit is, it's just kids here, there are no adults. They think less is love and love is S. And it can be, but not always. I find my wife attractive, and if she got the drive back, I wouldn't do it. But she doesn't. So do I. I'll get down voting for this. But I answered the question. I simply didn't agree to be celibate the rest of my life. Story 73. Keywords here is selfish. Almost everyone here said it. I don't know about you, but in a basic values way, would you want to be with someone selfish? Of course, doing it is fun. But they chose to be in a relationship like you're selfish enough to go get what you want, regardless of what it does to someone else, but you're too weak to face the consequences? Children do this. It's the most cowardly thing you can do to someone. Don't be a coward. Grow some courage, or don't cheat. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.